What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. Well, Arkansas with a disappointing loss, not a loss that I thought they were going to have against the Texas A&M Aggies, 34-22. I thought it was going to be more of a heartbreaking type of loss like it's been so many times, but I lost nonetheless. We're going to talk to Andrew Ellis, get his thoughts on the game. We're going to talk to Danny West, get a little bit of recruiting update. We're also going to look back at this game, what we saw after watching the video, and look ahead, of course, to Ole Miss on Saturday. All that and more on today's episode of Hog Sports Live. There are so many ways to watch and listen to this show, guys. I mean, we're everywhere. You can always follow us on Facebook Live, where we stream the show live. Be sure to follow the page if you haven't done so already. Also available on YouTube. If you haven't taken a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel, love to have that. Up to 72% now. 72% of the people that watch the Walk and Talk on Saturday aren't even subscribed to the channel. So subscribe, hit the notifications bell so you're alerted anytime we upload new videos, and throw us a like or a thumbs up on both of those platforms. Also available on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't taken a moment to throw us a 5-star review on there, we would love to have that from you, as well as Spotify and anywhere else you can think of to find podcasts. We are there. Hog Sports is just $1 right now for your first month at HawgSports.com. I don't want to get you guys looking too far ahead to basketball just yet. I know football season has been disappointing to this point. There still is a lot of football to go. And, man, if you were on the site this past week, you saw a lot of great coverage from Grant Baker, our new guy, Curtis Wilkerson, and Andrew Ellis. Those guys just really hit it out of the park this weekend with the basketball coverage. We'll be at the Red-White game on Saturday. That's at 6:30 in Barnhill Arena. Not Saturday, Wednesday. On Wednesday in Barnhill Arena at 6:30. So we'll be there for that. That'll be exciting. We'll have the whole team there. A lot of great coverage coming to you on Wednesday. Where to start? Kickoff time announced for Arkansas and Alabama. Let's do some housekeeping stuff first. This is an 11 o'clock game, big surprise. It's either going to be on ESPN. It will be on ESPN. It'll be on ESPN. The SEC announced on Monday. So that's in 12 days. I still haven't seen them exercise the 6-day option yet. So we'll see what happens with Mississippi State. But CBS twice a year, they get to do a 6-day option where they, instead of doing it 12 days out, they do it 6 days out. And that can depend on a lot of other games that are going on that week. So 11 o'clock Saturday from Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Injury report, actually some good news on John Morgan. That was a scary deal. You see that a lot, very precautionary. Pittman said he kind of got taken up under the jaw there. Maybe got his neck rattled a little bit, but it sounds like he's got a test today, but it sounds like everything's going to be okay with him, and he may even be able to play on Saturday. So that's really good news considering how that situation looked for John. Dwight McLaughlin kind of indicated that he might be ready Saturday. I think that's probably Now, I've seen it. Last year, I believe there was a Texas A&M player who had concussion-like symptoms the week before, and he played against Arkansas. So it's happened before, but usually you don't see it happen. It just depends on how well they progress. It looked like he might have taken a knee to the head in the game on Saturday. Obviously, Luke has devastating news there. Clavicle broken. He's out. I mean, it's pretty much out for the season. They haven't said that, but I don't know how long. These young guys heal faster, but that sounds like a pretty devastating long-term season-ending type of injury. It's unfortunate because he had become Arkansas's biggest weapon on offense, and, man, without him, tight end is pretty bleak. They can't block at tight end. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to all of my thoughts from rewatching the game and more here in a little bit. Just want to go over some of these things first with you guys. Okay, so there were some guys. I mean, you're going to get banged up after a game like that, no question. But it sounds obviously positive on John Morgan. Very disappointing on Luke Has that he's lost for the season. So as I mentioned, the basketball games at 6:30 p.m. You've got UT Tyler in an exhibition game on October 20th. That's a Friday. Purdue in a charity exhibition on Saturday, October 28th, and Monday, November 6th, Alcorn State. And the basketball season officially starts. So one reason October is the greatest month of the year is because, you have conference football, and that can be depressing with Arkansas, I know, but maybe it's your high school team or some other team you've got. But conference plays in full swing in football. Basketball's just starting to get amped up, and looks like Arkansas is going to have a really good team, obviously, as we come to expect under Eric Musselman. But what else do we love about October? The leaves are starting to change. The weather's starting to get a little cooler, but not too cold. It's still daylight savings time, so it's not just dark at 5 o'clock. Soups, chilies, root vegetables, pumpkin, squash, Marzen beer, Oktoberfest. A lot of great things. My birthday, my mom's birthday, my dad's birthday, all in October. And let's wrap the whole thing up. Let's put a bow on it, on the whole thing, and kick off the holiday season with Halloween. It's a great month. October is, and especially in Arkansas with the weather the way it is, been my favorite month for a long time. For about 45, going on 46 years. I'll tell you who my favorite internet service provider is. That's our friends over at Ozarks Go. You know that already. 479-684-4900. You can reach them at ozarksgo.net/hog. Call or check them out on the internet. If you don't have Ozarks Go, maybe it's choppy for you, but you can reach them at ozarksgo.net/hog. They are a local company, so when you call them, you're going to talk to somebody local, somebody who's familiar with this area, who knows the region that you're in and all that kind of stuff. That's one of the benefits of going with a local company, and nothing to sacrifice. I've had these guys for over 2.5 years now, and my internet has been fantastic the entire time. I've never had to unplug and replug my router. I never had, why is this not working? None of that. I've just experienced 100% uptime. The only time I didn't is when they sent me several messages. Hey, we just want to make sure you know you're going to have an outage for about an hour at midnight. And that's the only time. So Trey Biddy stamp of approval for our friends over at Ozarks Go. I use their Multigig, which is 2,500 megabits per second. It's lightning quick. Everything just goes. I've used Gigabit, which is 1,000 megabits per second, which is going to work for most people. They offer several different tiers. They're not going to jack your rates up. They have recently expanded service to Benton County, currently around Cave Springs, Lowell, getting a foothold into Rogers. So go check them out, our friends at Ozarks Go. Okay. This game, by the way, is coming up. Ole Miss is favored, just looking at the Bet Saracen app, Ole Miss is favored by plus 10.5. Excuse me, not plus 10.5, minus 10.5. Ole Miss is favored by minus 10.5. Arkansas is plus 10.5, obviously. Arkansas is plus 325 on the money line if you're feeling good about the Hogs, and 63.5 is the over-under. This is a game, last year Arkansas won 42-27. It was a lot later in the year, obviously. Ole Miss was ranked 14th in the country when Arkansas played them. At one point, like, I mean like at the very end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter, at the very end of the third quarter, before an Ole Miss touchdown, Arkansas was up 42-12 on Ole Miss in this game. 42-12. Obviously, we know it was a shootout the year before that. Came down to a play at the goal line, a 2-point play. So, all right. Met with Sam Pittman a little bit ago for his regular Monday press conference. I asked him the first question out of the press conference. I'm going to play that video for you instead of talking about some of the shakeup that they're going to have on the offensive line, some of the things that I had suggested also, back in the spring and in fall camp, like Brady Latham to left tackle possibly, or right tackle, either one of them. Maybe Bo Limmer, maybe that's not the best fit for him at center. Maybe Patrick Kudus would be a better fit at center since probably not ready for these guys on the edge. I'm going to let him talk to you about it, and we know Dominic Johnson a couple years ago worked some tight end. All right, let's go to Sam Pittman. It's about 3.5 minutes. Which, man, I don't know if I have much different questions than I did on Saturday, but going back and looking at it, looks like you guys really had some trouble blocking offensive line, tight end, running back. How do you get around that?
Well, I think we're going to look at some different scenarios up front, see if we can't. Sometimes. There's a difference in panic and a difference in really, really reviewing what we're trying to do and who's trying to do it. So we may shake up the offensive line a little bit, and you have to practice it. So you have to see if what you think might works in practice. I think that would be one way. We got to make some guys miss at running back. Our quarterback has to play consistent, and we've got to be able to get open. If you look at it, I think offensively, a lot of it's been maybe tagged on the offensive line, and there's certainly problems there. But there's a lot of areas that we can get better at. And, we're going to open completely up our tight end situation and see who can play in there, because obviously we've been a little bit of musical chairs there as well, with the exception of Luke. But we've got to do a better job coaching. We have to do a better job with the details. That we found a positive in the penalties. We cut that down, which I think hurt us, and with some results of winning and losing. So that was one positive. But we all have to play better, and we have to get some explosive plays. Obviously we were unfortunate. We could have tied the game up. Those plays we need, and I think our team, I'll have a better feel of them this afternoon, but I've talked to a lot of the kids today, and Trey, we lost 3 in a row 2 years ago and bounced back pretty good, and I think we will again, but I don't know that we can continue to do the same things and say, well, we're just going to get better at them. I think we've got to shuffle some things up to maybe ignite a spark into us a little bit, because I do think we've got good players, and we just got to play better and coach better.
Just on those points, Dominic Johnson's worked a little tight end. I don't know if that's maybe something you mean, but we know Kudus has played some center.
Yeah.
Lemmer can play guard. Latham can play tackle. Are those some of the things that you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think you hit most of them. Exactly what we're doing. I think lost in this a little bit, I've been fairly pleased with our defense, 3 turnovers, things of that nature. So, but offensive, I think you hit on some of the moves that we're going to look at.
All right. So I've gone back and looked at the game, obviously. Arkansas coach Sam Pittman there. Gone back and looked at the game, obviously, and had a lot of the same stuff that I thought I saw live. I'm watching the game there in Arlington from the press box. The delay on my, playing it on my computer gives me an opportunity really to kind of watch the play right after it happens, which is good. But just my final takes. First of all, this season isn't going the way that I predicted it was going to go, okay? They are at least 1 loss off, maybe 2, depends on how Ole Miss goes. But I picked them to win 8 games. Why did I pick them to win 8 games? The same thing that I still feel about this overall roster. I still feel everywhere but the offensive line anyway, and tight end now with Luke Has out, linebacker possibly too in terms of having the top end talent of a Drew Sanders. But I still feel like this roster is overall deep and overall talented, and the most in the Sam Pittman era, the most in those categories, aside from offensive line. The mistake that I made with the offensive line in my projection, and again, we were not able to watch scrimmages, and that's, there's a lot of new faces on the offensive line. But assuming that Sam Pittman, who is widely regarded as the best offensive line coach in the country before he came to Arkansas, would have the offensive line settled in year 4. That's the mistake that I made, making that assumption. And you know what they say about assumptions. And here I am, looking like an ass. So that, to me, is probably the biggest mistake I made about this team. I don't feel bad about the defense right now. Now, they're going to be tested against Ole Miss Saturday. They'll be tested. But I don't feel bad about the defense. You go back and look at the points they gave up. There's 34 points surrendered. How many of that's truly on the defense's shoulders here? I would say 13 of those points are squarely on the defense. Now, it could be up to 19 points if they had made those 2 field goals that they missed. Okay, so I'll sacrifice that, sure. But you look at some of the other stuff. Arkansas was stopped on 4th down at their own 39-yard line. Can you put that on the defense? They gave up a pick 6. Can't put that on the defense. Special teams gave up a punt return for a touchdown. And additionally, the offense just couldn't get anything really going in the game. And that's also going to impact the defense when you keep having to put them out there over and over again. They're going 3 and out, keep putting your defense out there. Now, nobody should be doing backflips about giving up 414 yards, but that's not the end of the world. That's not fantastic, but it's not horrendous. It's not egregious, okay? Yes, defense is not perfect, but they're better than they were last year. Secondary is better than it was last year. Defensive line is damn sure better than it was last year. And, the linebackers may not be as good. But it's not like Jaheim Thomas and Pooh Paul are bad options at linebacker. It's not like that either. So, to me, the offense is obviously a major problem with this team. Defense is going to get a bigger challenge against Ole Miss, so don't come back at me saying, hey, I thought you said all this. Now, I want to bring this up, too, because I had a little firestorm on Sunday. I'm watching the game, sitting in my chair watching the game, and it's after Arkansas's fourth down, which I want to say this, too, first. I've been saying all year, have I not? Have I not been saying all year, punt the damn ball? When you're in your own end, punt it. If it's 4th and 1, you should know you suck at 4th down and 1. You suck at the goal line. Stop trying to do it. Stop trying to say, I'm going to decide who wins and loses this game right here in this moment. This is it, right before halftime. We're going to have a big momentum swing one way or the other right here. Why do it? It's a 10-6 game at that point? 10-6. Why do it there? And if you are going to do it, I'm 100%. Yeah, let's get him lined up under center. Let's do the tush push. Everybody's seen tons of videos on social media of the tush push this weekend. Why not do that? Yes, if you're going to do it, let's do that. I don't have a lot of confidence in this offensive line getting a push, though. Okay? Punt the ball away. Punt the ball away. Live to fight another day. Don't decide the game right here, right before halftime. It didn't work against Kent State. It didn't work against BYU. And it's damn sure not going to work against Texas A&M. That's my thoughts on it. So while I'm watching that, after this point, they get down to a 3rd and 5 situation. And I'm watching Texas A&M. They've got the right side of the line overloaded. There's nobody else. There's no wide receiver out here. It's just center, offensive lineman, and I believe a tight end right here. All right, so the guy who's technically in the tackle spot gives a little flinch, and the tight end flinches. Okay, the head linesman's right there. He's looking down the line. This is what he's looking for, encroachment and offsides. Okay, encroachment and false starts. That's what he's keyed on at this point. And he sees it. And so all I did was point this out, okay? And I made it clear. I'm not saying that officiating caused Arkansas to lose this game at all. I made it in the first line, made a big point about it. And Twitter only gives you so many characters, but I wanted to make sure people didn't think I was saying, like, this is a reason. Look at this. This is why. I mean, it's a little piddly 5-yard penalty. It might have changed the outcome right there. It wasn't going to change the outcome of the game. Arkansas was going to lose this game no matter what. It's not to say that Texas A&M didn't get PI calls that weren't called against Arkansas. It's not to say that they didn't miss a targeting, which I think they did. It's not to say there weren't holds that were missed. I mean, 0 penalties is absolutely ridiculous. But people have issues with reading comprehension. They don't read the first line of text, what I write. And, well, why don't you point out all this? Why don't you point this out? Look at this guy crying about Arkansas getting that. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. Disregard the teams involved, okay? Disregard the outcome of the game. This is an example of not a missed call, a seen call that was decided not to throw. Because you can see the guy jump, and then you can look at the head linesman, and he goes, he instinctively reaches for a flag, but he doesn't throw it. And that's my question. He sees this. We know he sees it. This isn't a missed call where the ref's blind or something. This is a guy who sees a penalty and chooses not to throw his flag. And I just want to know why. I don't think that's good for Arkansas. I don't think it's good for the SEC. I don't think it's good for Texas A&M. I don't think it's good for any of these guys who bust their ass all year. Millions of dollars are on the line. And why is this guy? He sees it. In my opinion, he sees it. He may have some other explanation, but to me, the guy flinches, he gestures towards his flag, and then kind of shakes it off. I'm not gonna throw it. You can look it up on Twitter, but it got probably up to 500,000 engagements so far, and probably up to about 200,000 views, which I did not expect. But Texas A&M fans really were coming after me about it. But Texas A&M, congratulations. You guys won the game. You deserve to win. You're probably going to have a pretty good season based on what I saw. And you got screwed on some calls also. I wasn't talking about that. I didn't mean to implement the game in this. I'm just talking about this play, okay? And that's it. So that's my piece on that. So I'm going to leave it at that. I tried to reply to everybody who doesn't have good reading comprehension skills. Literally said, I'm not suggesting officiating caused Arkansas to lose to Texas A&M at all. First line. Why are you saying this? You're indicating that this was a problem the whole game. Ridiculous. Anyway, just a microcosm there of the whole game. What's the state of this program right now? Well, they've got some issues on the offensive line. Big surprise. Bo Limmer graded out at 44.6 on 30 pass blocking plays. Patrick Kudus was 24.8 on 30 pass blocking plays. 24.8. That's just not going to get it done. Arkansas's tackles are completely folding. They're just not ready. They're just not ready for these type of edge rushers that they're seeing in this conference. The running backs are struggling blocking. Dubinion hasn't been good in pass pro either. Rocket Sanders let a guy go right past him. I give Rocket plenty of leeway. And it's not like Rocket Sanders just sucks all of a sudden. The guy ran for 1,400 yards, his first-team All-SEC running back. Now he's terrible. The guy was just coming back from a pretty serious injury. Give him a little break here. But I will say the tight ends on this roster, now you don't have Luke Has. The tight ends on this roster can't block. They just can't. You've got guys out there just because they can block, and they're not good catchers, and they can't block. Okay? It makes all the sense in the world at this point to move Dominic Johnson, not just to tight end, but let him play both. Let him work at both spots. And it comes down to play calling. Like, first of all, you're not going to be able to do anything. Sam Pittman's right. You're not going to be able to do anything offensively. I don't care what the play calls are from Dan Enos. If you can't block, if you can't protect the quarterback, if you can't run block, nobody's going to look good if you can't block. And Arkansas's line can't block, the tight ends can't block, and the running backs can't block. It's a trifecta of missed blocks. Wide receivers probably okay, I guess, but that's a problem. We don't know if Dan Enos is a good play caller or not. I do know one thing. Your tight ends aren't very good. Why are we running two tight sets all the time? Why are we doing that? These guys can't catch. They can't block. Why are they out there? I know it's a lack of options and stuff. I don't think it's a problem with the wide receivers getting open either. I think it's a problem with not having enough time. And I hear stuff, I heard like Matt Stinchcomb saying, well, he's got time here. Well, can you see that he's getting grabbed? Like, how are you going to react when you're getting grabbed? That's not having time. He doesn't have any time to throw. KJ Jefferson does not suddenly suck, okay? It's not because he sucks. The guy's a preseason All-SEC quarterback. He scored more touchdowns than any player in Razorback history. It's not time to see who else can get in there and do something, okay? It's not. Everything is, I almost said a word, everything is screwed up because they can't block. Defense, no, I'm not saying this is a world-beating defense. But this defense, if you put this defense with the last three offenses that they've had, most Hog fans would be satisfied. Most Hog fans would be satisfied with the record this team would produce. But the offense is just screwed. And I don't know if there's an answer for him. Yes, move Dominic Johnson to tight end. I don't know if, like, these moves that they're talking about making, you don't make these moves mid-season and just like, boom, answers. That's not but it's going to be a better option, I think, than what they've got going right now. Latham to tackle, Kudus to center, Limmer to guard. Limmer's out of position, I think. He's not snapping the ball very well. They're high, they're low. Your first read as a quarterback can't be, am I going to get the snap? It can't be that. It's got to be like the conflict defender. It can't be, am I going to get the snap? Blocking, it all comes down to protection. It all comes down to protection. Run blocking isn't great. It's way better than pass blocking is right now. I've also heard some narratives that this is what Arkansas is capable of, like recruiting offensive line. You don't have to go out and get these fantastic first-round draft picks on the offensive line. It's great to have them, yeah, but you can go out and get you a Denver Kirkland, a Sebastian Tretola, a Dan Skipper, a Frank Ragnow, and a Mitch Smothers. You know why I know they can do that? Because Sam Pittman did that. Mitch Smothers, I believe, was recruiting from the previous staff. But all those other guys are Sam Pittmans. And Smothers wasn't an NFL guy, but you'd take him right now. He was a good center. You take him right now, and you can win ball games with him. Those other 4 guys all played in the NFL, not practice squads. They played. They were either drafted or played in the NFL, all 4 of them. You can win with that kind of offensive line. We saw Houston Nutt. He didn't have like these first-round NFL draft picks after another. He had some good players. He had Sean Andrews and Jason Peters, who, by the way, wasn't drafted. He had some good players, but they still ran the hell out of the ball. And, last year's offensive line, I don't remember a ton of guys going to the NFL. Line before that, I remember like Ricky Stromberg. Line before that, was there a bunch of NFL guys on that offensive line when they led Power 5 in rushing? You don't have to have that. You can go get guys who are quality players, who are NFL players, who aren't necessarily first-round draft picks, and you can operate your offense. But what you've got now is like your tackles are just getting bent and folded. You've got linemen on the ground. Like Brady Latham has been a good player for Arkansas. I don't know if he's still hurt or not, but I've never seen him on the ground so many times as he's been on the ground. So they don't have I don't think they have a lot of answers right now. And I'll tell you something else I would do, like this transfer portal and NIL money. I'd spend it all on linemen. Like, you can go get good skill guys. Linemen, quarterbacks, defensive backs. I mean, to me, like, if you don't have an offensive line, it doesn't matter what else you got. And we all know that. It's all been very frustrating because I do think that they have a roster full of good players and good depth, except they don't have anybody that can block. Am I running late on Andrew? Sorry if I am, Andrew. I'm getting to you next. You knew it was going to be a problem right off the bat. Right when you saw them collapse around KJ on that very first play and he had to fall forward for no gain. You knew it at that point. Andrew's going to be mad because I'm going to take all his points, all the points he wants to make. All right, where are we going here? Okay, I think I'm pretty close to where I want to be. We talked about the shakeup on the offensive line. Okay. Let's go to Andrew. I know you guys want to hear from Andrew Ellis. He's going to have some interesting takes. Andrew's unforgiving sometimes. For those of you who don't follow Andrew, you can follow him at Andrew Ellis 24/7 on Twitter. Does a fantastic job covering all sports for us. Andrew, how you doing, man?
I'm doing tremendous, Trey. I'm currently at Baumwalker Stadium watching some fall baseball, as I tend to do, and I'm ready to talk some football. What's going on?
What's the pitching matchups?
We got freshman Gabe Gackle on the mound. It is pronounced Gackle. It is spelled Gaeckle.
Like
I've been saying Geikel. I've been saying Geikel for like 6 months, and then I was corrected the other day. It is Gackle. Going up against another freshman lefty, Hunter Dietz, who has been making a bunch of headlines, getting a ton of buzz from a bunch of national outlets. He is not given up a hit yet as a Razorback in fall practice, so I'm really looking forward to see what he's got going on today.
All right, Andrew. Well, that's a lot of fun. And of course, we got basketball on Wednesday, so mixing in some other sports, and we kind of need it because football has not been what it should be.
I would say that's a fair assessment. And, man, I mean, every other game this year, you could kind of start talking yourself one way or the other. Even the BYU game, you're like, well, it was a weird, BYU, maybe they're just really good. Who knows? What's the situation there? It seemed like there was a step in the right direction against LSU.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was something you could build on, and then whatever that was, it went the opposite way. And I think this is the worst performance of the year, all things considered. I mean, the offensive line is what it is. I don't even think we need to remind folks how bad it's been to this point. The only thing is, I think people are, everyone seems to be pleased with what the defense was doing yesterday or Saturday. I'm seeing it a little different. I feel like good teams move the ball against Arkansas at will, unless they do something stupid like a penalty or an interception or just fumbling or like whatever. I mean, what has it been, like 3 punts in 2 weeks or something like that? So, like, I'm not really seeing a ton of, tangible skills to build on for this team. I think this is a talented team, and I think it's a team that we liked a lot of the pieces in fall camp. Every now and then I'm watching these games, I'm still seeing stuff that I like, but it just seems like they can't string together good performances 2 weeks in a row in any facet of the game. I just feel like it's a team that's grossly underachieving, and I think Saturday was the worst performance, and that's kind of all I have to say about it at that point. I don't think we need to spend too much time talking about the game itself. I think it's all about the big picture and kind of what happens next, and I think that's probably the more compelling thing to talk about at this point.
Yeah. All right, Andrew. Thanks for joining us. I don't totally disagree, I guess, with the defense. I agree and disagree, I think, with you on the defense. I feel like, I can attribute like 13 points the defense gave up, but who knows what would have happened if things had gone differently. And you also have to consider the defense gave them, 10 points just by, making plays on defense. Really forced 2 turnovers. One was kind of given to them on a bad quarterback handoff. But I don't know. I think they'll probably get worked a little bit against Ole Miss on Saturday in Oxford. I think that's probably going to happen. But I don't think the defense is – I think the defense is better than they were last year. And I think if you took this defense and put them on any of the offenses the last 3 years, then I think most fans would be satisfied, with the not satisfied, but accepting of the results. I think it could be an 8-win team if you put this defense on, any of the last 3 offenses. What do you think of that?
I think I do agree with that. I think that's something I can get behind. And I think that, the defense at least seems to be showing some fight and some adjustments here and there. Like, I thought they were a lot better in the second half than they were in the first half, which tells me that at the very least, they can communicate with each other and figure things out and fix issues that arise. And I think that, just that coaching staff has a lot more youth and vibrant energy to where it's like I can talk myself into that a little bit. I think you brought up a good point of the Ole Miss game where it's like whatever optimism you have, let's let it rest for about 7 days here until they face this Ole Miss offense. But I do think there's at least something there to build on, especially with the way they were playing the second half. But I just, I guess I'm just, and I do think that if you take this defense that Arkansas has now with the last few years, I definitely think that's an 8 or 9 win team right there. And I think that's part of why we projected this team to win 8 games this year, is because we were kind of giving the offense the benefit of the doubt that it turns out to not have deserved there. Yeah. I think my concern of the defense comes from the defensive line, because that's a group that, if there's one thing the fans can accurately get on us for hyping up, it's the defensive line. Because that was one group that I was super impressed with every time I looked at them in fall camp. Every time we talked to a coach, I believed them more and more when they were talking about how disruptive this group was going to be. And it just hasn't really been there. And there's been little moments here and there, and they haven't been horrible against the run, but it does seem like the defensive line, it just hasn't been the group of game changers I was expecting it to be, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, maybe a bit of, I think that relative to maybe any defensive line I can think of recently, I think this is a better defensive line they've had. Now, by SEC standards, is it a great defensive line? No. By Arkansas standards, maybe it is compared to what you've seen in the past with most of them. But I think there's probably a little bit of a balance with, the defensive line is all right. The offensive line is way worse. And these are the two units that are going against each other that you would base, those types of opinions on.
100%. And I think that's, we quickly learned in the offseason, because, that's the beauty of fall camp is like, oh, this group looks awesome. And you start doing the math and you're like, well, so that means their opponent is not doing well? Like, is the defense struggling? I think that we've gotten our definitive answer on that front in terms of, I think the offensive line is just way worse than any of us had really imagined it would be. And Trey, this is a perfect segue here.
Okay.
I've seen there's been some criticism of us people saying that we hyped this team up too much and all that, and we told everyone this team was going to be good, and now they're mad at us. So I decided to fact check it, and I wanted to bring some evidence to the table. If you bear with me here for a second.
Yes, let's do it.
Our report evidence. This comes from August 28th in a practice report written by yours truly. I said, and I quote, "The vibes around the offensive line could not have been worse while we were out there. There was not a ton of energy, no players talking to each other between reps. One player even talked back to the coaching staff saying we've done this 1,000 times already when asked to repeat a drill." I even left out some expletives in that statement because he did have some expletives there. But I remember saying that leading up to the Western Carolina game, I was like, hey, there's something, a little weird with this group. And look, I project them to win 8 games. I'm not trying to act like I didn't. But I think that the idea that, people weren't concerned about this offensive line preseason is just not true. I think that's something we talked about all offseason. And when this was presented to fans, I got a ton of pushback. I read the comments from this exact story, and all the comments are, well, there's just too much buy-in on this team. They'll get it fixed out. Pittman's not going to let this offensive line be bad, blah, 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 blah. People pushing back against me in the preseason when I shared some concerns with the offensive line. And to be honest with you, I was giving that group a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because of the Pittman factor.
Right.
And so that's why I think that, when Andrew Hutchinson asked in a press conference today, Pittman, what's your hands-on approach with this group? I think it's a very valid question because that's kind of how we all view it in our minds is like, okay, if the group struggles, like, eventually something's going to change here. And I think that this is the week that we're finally starting to hear some moving around and shuffling, positions and stuff like that. And so maybe now we'll start seeing the changes, but I'm just kind of surprised as to how it caught everyone off guard that this offensive line is bad, because we've been talking about this all offseason. That was kind of the big question mark, and it's a question mark that is, still there.
Absolutely. Good points, Andrew Ellis. Again, follow Andrew at Andrew Ellis 24/7 on Twitter. And if you're wondering why you might not have heard that, because I'm assuming that's a VIP article, Andrew.
Yes, that is a VIP article. Yeah. That's the premium stuff that we give out.
That's the premium stuff. And if you want to sign up at HawgSports, you can do so at HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and it is just $1 right now for your first month. Blowout coverage, Andrew, from basketball. You guys did a fantastic job. You, Curtis, and Grant, our new guy. Just tell us a little bit about what you saw at basketball.
Well, I'll tell you, last year we got to see at least 2 practices, and it might have even been 3 leading up to the season, and one of those was before they went to Europe, so it's still a little early in the process. But last year when you were there at practice, you could tell that it was a young team. It seemed like every 4 minutes they were stopping play, and they were bringing everyone in and kind of explaining something again for probably the 10th time. And it seemed like their practice flow, they had to take some time to get that groove with such a young group. It was not the case with this practice. I mean, you could tell that this was a veteran group full of adults like Tremont Mark, Devo, and Khalif Battle, and all these different guys who have kind of been there, done that before. And you could tell it was an older group that had some more confidence. And, it's always tough to tell for sure. We were in there for about 45 minutes, so it's not like we were there forever. We didn't get to see everything. But I like the vibes I saw with this team and just kind of seeing them interact. It seems like there's a lot of productive things going on. And, just the athleticism and the talent is certainly there. I mean, the freshman Bay Fall impressed me way more than I thought he was going to impress me. I really when I'm thinking about this team and how this rotation is going to line up, I'll be honest, I haven't really had him penciled in for significant minutes. And who knows if that's what's going to end up happening. He's still going to have to compete with some guys like Jalen Graham and Mekhi Mitchell and some older veterans in the room in that big man rotation. But I really like what the force he was presenting there on the defensive end. And I just really like this group. I think there's a ton more shooting than there's been in years past, which it's hard not to be better than Arkansas was the last 2 years from the 3-point range. But it seems like it's a group that's really going to have some potential as a long-range shooting team, and really just driving and kicking and being able to knock down those open threes is going to be such a weapon, because we really haven't seen a ton of that kind of stuff going on for the Arkansas team the last couple of years. You know
what I love about Muss is it's not like, he brings these new guys in to run his system. He's going to run his system with these guys are going to fit in. It's like, I'm going to bring in an entirely different team, and we're going to do something totally different this year. And it's been that way every single year. I don't know how many different ways he can do it, but this team, last year's team couldn't shoot. Was last year's team that ended the 3-point streak, or was the team before that?
I want to say it was the team before that. Last year's team was they were just as bad 3-point statistically over the course of the season.
And they didn't have a Note, but he would just shoot a million of them. But this year's team, they're going to make a lot of 3-pointers. I think it's going to be a really fun team to watch.
Absolutely. And, I think that's a great point on just how Musselman adapts to whatever his situation is. And as we've seen in the last few years, it might not be right out the gate. There might be some times where it's a little weird, and we might have it seems like every year there's a basketball game where we all leave it and we're like, oh, wow, this team actually isn't going to figure it out. What's going to happen? And then, of course, March rolls around and they're rolling. But, absolutely. I think this team, they're actually set up. They should have a better start than they've had the last couple of years just because of that experience they have with some of these older guys. But I really like what I was seeing with that group. And, man, I wish we could see more practice out of that, because I really enjoyed just being able to sit in and just watch Eric Musselman work and do his stuff there. It's really, really fun to see.
Yeah. Well, the red-white showcase should be fun. All right, Andrew, anything else to add before we cut you loose?
I think I'm all good, man. I think I got all my venting off my chest. I'm all good now.
I feel good about it too. All right, Andrew. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, you have a good one, Trey.
All right, everybody. That's Andrew Ellis. Again, you can follow Andrew at Andrew Ellis 24/7. Does a great job for us over at HawgSports.com. Let's see. We're going straight to Danny West now. Let's see. Let's actually look at, right before we go to Danny, let's look at Ole Miss football schedule here. 73-7 opening up against Mercer. That's a lot of points. 37-20 against number 22 Tulane in New Orleans. 48-23 against Georgia Tech. And then couldn't get any offense going against Alabama. 24-10. Of course, we understand that. And then this past Saturday, just a shootout against LSU, 55-49. And then, of course, Arkansas. It's a stripe of watch, so they're going to be in stripes. It's a 6:30 p.m. game in Oxford on the SEC Network. That's what's coming up. Jackson Dart is 91 of 142 passing for 1,485 yards at 64.1%, 11 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And if you thought they had a good backup last week in Max Johnson, don't forget Spencer Sanders is also there, who's former starter at Oklahoma State, who they could use right now. He's their backup, and they also have Walker Howard, who's probably the future of the program. Quinshon Judkins, we, of course, remember him. 90 carries for 378 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns. Not having quite the season that he had last year. Jackson Dart's also a very capable runner with 269 yards, has a long of 68 yards, has 4 rushing touchdowns also. Jordan Watkins with 29 catches for 450 yards. Dayton Wade has 23 for 367 as the top 2 receivers. So Lane Kiffin has Ole Miss rolling pretty good right now. All right, we'll hop over to Danny West. Don't know if there's just a ton of recruiting stuff. It's not really as big a recruiting month, especially when you don't have any home games because you can't host recruits. So we're on this 4-game road stretch. Danny, how you doing, man?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. You got any thoughts on this game that just played out Saturday? We just had Andrew on.
A whole bunch of them.
Yeah, let's hear it from you.
You want to take it off the air?
I've already done that with you.
Yeah, that was fun. But I do have a lot of thoughts on it, Trey. I think if anybody's in the stars don't matter crowd, they probably ought to just quit watching, because I think Saturday was a perfect illustration of why stars do matter, because one team had 9, count them 9, former top 100 national recruits on the defensive line alone. And the other team had 0 5-stars on its offensive line. So you tell me which team got manhandled. I think stars do matter. And, what's worse, I guess, looking back on it in hindsight, coming out of spring, Trey, I think we all felt pretty good. What they did in the portal at the time, I remember saying, man, I wish they'd have gotten one more safety. I think you agreed with me. Yeah. Wish they'd have gotten one more safety, when really – I guess we should have been saying, boy, they needed about 3 or 4 more offensive linemen. And I'm not, they've got enough people on Twitter getting after them and making fun of them. I'm not going to do all that. It is what it is. Everybody can see it's a problem. So I just think there's a huge talent gap, and Arkansas's best talent is way too inexperienced, not ready for it yet.
But we've seen, Danny, we've seen them, we've seen, Houston Nutt offensive lines, Bielema offensive lines. Mm-hmm. And Bielema offensive lines, they were actually pretty well-regarded recruits. But we've seen them bring in guys and develop them and not just get folded like these guys are getting. I mean, they're getting getting pushed back so quick, it's not even funny. The development's not – and it's not just Patrick Kutas' fault. Like, he's not ready. He's not ready for these edge guys. And Kutas was a 4-star recruit. And Chambly's not ready for these guys. Where is the guys that have been developed in the program that are ready to go on the offensive line? That to me is a problem, because you can develop an offensive lineman, and it's great to have a first-round draft pick, as I was saying at the top of the show. But we've seen, quality offensive lines at Arkansas where, guys went on to the NFL, maybe not first-round picks, but where Arkansas has had good enough offensive line to lead Power 5 in rushing.
Mike Marcuson used to have them top 3 every year in the league, offensive line-wise. I mean, with a bunch of Dan Doty's, all the names way back. But, I'm sitting here, this morning looking at a list of names that I compiled, and I'm not out to get anybody. You know how I feel about Cody Kennedy. I love the guy. I think he's a great guy. If anybody spent 5 minutes with him, they'd probably take it a little easier on him, because he really is a good dude in my book. So I'm not out to get anybody.
But we know that's not good enough also.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm looking at a list this morning of guys that made at least one, but in many cases, multiple visits over the last 3 years, offensive line targets, and not all of them are 5 stars. You know, I totally agree with you on what you're saying. You can get some really good 3 stars. I think Robert Scott from Conway, who picked Florida State, kid just wanted to go out of state.
Yeah.
I think he was only a 3-star, but you look at him now, I'm reading stuff about his draft stock, and wouldn't that be nice to have?
Yeah.
I mean, Robert Scott, we'll start there real quick, just because I took the time to make the list, but Broderick Jones. And I want to say this first, Trey. In a lot of these cases, it's not about missing the guy. It's about what do you get after you missed on him. You know what I mean? Like the gap sometimes, the fall off there, the drop off in between your top target and the guy you kind of had to settle on, if we want to use that word, has been, you know, at times pretty drastic. So Robert Scott's one from right there in the state, went to Florida State. Broderick Jones, 5-star from Georgia, went to Georgia. First rounder, 14th to Pittsburgh. Emory Jones, top 100 kid from Louisiana. Guess where he went? LSU.
Yep.
Elijah Pritchett. I've got several here. Just give me a minute. Elijah Pritchett, top 50 kid out of Georgia. He went to Alabama, no surprise. Charles Jagusa, top 50 national kid from Illinois. He went to Notre Dame. Bo Hewley, top 100 from Georgia, went to Georgia. Roderick Kearney visited, I think a couple of times, maybe 150 kid from Florida, went to Florida. Miles McVay from St. Louis, went to Alabama. Connor Stroh, 3-star, only a 3-star. It kind of falls in line with, you know, some of the 3-stars we were talking about there. Big kid from Texas, went to Texas. Bryce Lovett, 3-star from Florida, went to Florida. Madden Sanker, here's one that kind of bothers you a little bit. 4-star from Georgia, went to freaking Louisville. What? You know, I mean, we saw a kid a couple of weeks ago, Kingsley. I can't pronounce his last name even after all these years, but 5-star from Utah. You know, I think they felt really good about him, but it was during COVID and tough to travel and all that. So he signed with Oregon, went back home to Utah, and plays for BYU and came up here and beat you a couple weeks ago. So made the Final Four for guys like Terrence Ferguson, a 5-star from Georgia who went to Bama. That's almost 15 guys, and now you look at the current class, kind of the same deal. You know, Fletcher, Westfall, of course, kid from Virginia. He's going to Florida after visiting 4, 5, 6 times here. And then Shaq McCroy. I'll finish there, Trey. But obviously, big-time kid out of Alabama. He's going to Oregon. So, you know, again, I'm not picking on anybody or trying to get somebody fired. I'm just pointing at the many misses. I think on Saturday, you really, really missed them. I mean, because one team clearly had them. Clearly. I don't know how in the heck they lost to Miami and gave up 48 points. I know some of that was special teams. I think they had 3 turnovers. I understand how it happened, but, boy, they ought to be ashamed losing that game. With that talent, that was, hey, hats off to them. I offended the 12th man crowd last week. I'm not taking it back. It's still confusing to me. But, man, they ought to be able to win some games down there with that crew. That is insane talent. I was thoroughly impressed and very frustrated watching it.
Yeah, I hear you. Danny West joining us. So you can follow Danny at Danny West 24/7. He's the HawgSports recruiting analyst, which is just $1 right now for your first month at HawgSports.com. Danny, is there any recruiting news that you need to share with us right now?
Yeah.
That's current.
I think they had a pretty good turnout at the game Saturday. If that's positive news, a lot of committed guys. Akari Johnson, I want to say C.J. Brown made the trip. Tay Lockett, the 2026 commitment out of California, brought a heavily recruited buddy in the same class, 2026 receiver Madden Williams. Both of those guys from Bellflower, California, attending St. John Bosco. Several kids there. I want to say Zay Gentry is a 2025 defensive back. He's visited a couple of times, I think. DJ Duggar, a running back out of Leander, Texas, 4-star kid. So, you know, quite a few of those guys, but it's tough to keep hitting them up after 3 straight losses. You know what I mean? I kind of take a step back every now and then and let the kids breathe, because it puts them in a bad spot too, especially the committed guys. You keep hitting them up and saying, all right, what's your thoughts on this latest loss? You know, I'm not going to do that to a kid, but hey, at least they got free tickets and got to see a game.
All right, Danny.
There's your recruiting report.
Yeah. It's just kind of a weird, it's weird month for recruiting just because, past month just because, the lack of home games and, all those things.
It's gotten so seasonal now, dude. I mean, the first half of the year, really January through June, and I'm not making an excuse here, but January through June is by far the busiest stretch, the first half of the year, because Coach Pittman does seem to load up on so many commitments early as possible and get through the season. I think he enjoys focusing only on the season. I think here in the next couple of weeks, you're going to start seeing coaches hit the road, evaluation period. They're always a little bit later to start with some of that. I do think they sent a few coaches out around the Dallas area last Friday night, but we haven't just seen them hit the road yet. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that's still coming. So we've got that to look forward to. And, outside of that, I got some home games coming up, should be well attended. But then, man, it's all about the transfer portal, and it'll be here before you know it. So, while it seems slow for me, I tell myself every day, hey, just enjoy it while you can, because it's coming. That 45-day stretch is going to kill you again. So,
well, Danny, that's why we pay you the medium bucks.
Yeah, that's right. I do appreciate it too. Get on here and make people mad once a week. It's not a bad gig. It's really not.
All right, brother. We'll talk
man.
to you.
I wish I had more hope for you, man. It's just everybody knows where it's at right now. I think Saturday has potential. I'll just leave it there, Trey. It's been a rough week.
Yeah. All right, brother. We'll let you go.
Yep.
All right, everybody. That's Danny West. You can tell where Danny's mind is right now, and his heart as well. If you want to follow Danny, you can follow him at Danny West 24/7 Sports. And why wouldn't you? If you want the best in Razorback recruiting coverage, even though it's been a little quiet right now, it's going to pick up, especially when that portal gets here. All right, so I don't know. Facebook has changed things on me, so I can't see every comment, but I'm going to try to get through some of these comments. But before I do that, I would love for you guys to, if you're interested, if you're not satisfied with your internet service, or you think you can do better, then or you're moving or something, you're moving to the area, then you need to check out our friends over at Ozarks Go. You can reach them at ozarksgo.net/hog and find out if they're available in your area. Think Northwest Arkansas, think like north of the tunnel, Missouri, Oklahoma, into Rogers now, and several other areas. If you get Ozarks Electric, you probably are going to be able to get Ozarks Go. I've told you guys my experience. Had two nice gentlemen come in 2.5 years ago, set it up, in and out, and then a few months ago, upgraded to Multigig, which is 2,500 megabits per second, and it zooms. Even stuff like I've got my like hot points and stuff, like they're graded to do 1,000 megabits per second, but it makes them work on just a different level, like primes them completely out. Got my TVs hardwired and stuff straight in, and I mean, it just zips. And it's a great service, a great company. Really enjoy having them as our title sponsor the past couple of years. Go check them out at ozarksgo.net/hog, HAWG. You're going to want to add the /hog so they know you came from here. And you can reach them at 479-684-4900, Ozarks Go, if you need quality internet, reliable internet. You don't want to have a fight with your wife and your kids. Dad, why is my internet working? I don't know. Honey, the TV's not working. I don't know. I'm unplugging and replugging it. None of that. Not my experience anyway. No fighting at the Biddy household. Will Bonham says, hey, Trey, who was your favorite all-time Arkansas football coach? I've got a great story about this one, okay? And some of you have probably heard it before. So my wife, love her, she doesn't know everything about Razorback football. She loves watching the games and all that stuff, right? So she's telling me about this lady named Cindy Spencer and how nice her husband is. And he plays with our daughter at the tailgate and all this stuff. He is so nice, all this stuff. I'm like, okay. Tells me again later. She hung out with him at something or other. He's so nice. Playing with Annabelle, throw and catch, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, who is it? She's like, his name's Ken. I'm like, Ken Spencer? No, it's Cindy Spencer. Her last name's Hatfield now. I said, Ken Hatfield? You've been playing and hanging out with Ken Hatfield this whole time? She told me like this 3 or 4 different times about hanging out with Cindy Spencer's husband. Cindy Spencer's husband? Like, probably the only person, Cindy Spencer's great, probably the only person who refers to Ken Hatfield as Cindy Spencer's husband. So Ken Hatfield's up there. Houston Nutt has a special place in my heart. I hate the way it ended, and that definitely sours things. But when I was a student, I was a junior in 1998 at the University of Arkansas. Had gone through 2 years up there under Danny Ford, and the impact that Houston Nutt made in 1998, I'll never forget it. Same kind of impact Sam Pittman made when he first got here. I felt like in a lot of ways Sam Pittman was the right guy at that time. Now, we've all come into a point, and there are questions out there. Is he the right guy for the future? Is he going to be able to take him to that next level? And doesn't look great right now, obviously. But that holds a special place in my heart, too. I love winning 10 and 11 games, Bobby Petrino. Love winning 10 and 11 games. Hate the way that ended. I think it really torpedoed Arkansas in a lot of ways. It wasn't the only reason that Arkansas football experienced the worst 9 years in the history of the program, the worst 2 years, the worst 1 year, the worst 5 years, however you want to chop that up. All of those things in that 9-year span are true. Those are some of them, I guess. That's some of the guys I would name. I mean, I know it's not just one. It's a very coach answer. So who's standing out today? Everybody's standing out. All right, Josh G says, being a Hog fan is like dating a hot chick that occasionally cheats on you but swears up and down she's gonna change. George O'Neill says, we suck. I appreciate you saying that, George, because you said we. And it's a tendency of a lot of fans to say they suck. We won and they suck. But George O'Neill understands that we suck. Good on you. B. Bierman says, no bowl this year, 4-8. Yurachek will give Sam the ultimatum to make staff changes. If we're not bowling next season, he will be fired. If get to the end of the season and things continue the way they are and there's not staff changes, I mean, there's going to be. Like, there'll be staff changes. There's been staff changes every year. But Mark Pope says, look at this stat. Where do we rank on yards given up per pass attempt? Where's the stat? Scott Alexander says, easy to understand why the D front looked disruptive in camp. We were going up against this OL. Yeah, and Andrew does a great job. I don't 100% agree with him on the defense. I think the defensive line is pretty solid. I don't think maybe they're not, beating everybody, but they're also not getting pushed around. Defense, to me, wasn't a problem on Saturday. It wasn't, like, the solution, but I feel like they played well enough for Arkansas to win with a competent offense. Kingsley says, Andrew receipts Ellis. Yep, he kept those receipts. Andrew does a great job for us. For anybody, if you're not following Andrew, dude's only got like 3,000 Twitter followers somehow, and he's been with us for a couple years. But I mean, you see what a great job he does on this show. Check out his stuff on Twitter. We're gonna do a lot more with Andrew coming up here. He's gonna have a bigger role with us, expanded role, I should say. His role's already big, but we're gonna flip it around a little bit, do some different things. Joshua James Barton says, with KJ being an RPO QB, are we seeing that affect him, Enos' pro-style system, pro-style offense? First of all, blocking. I mean, I keep coming back to blocking. But, yeah, it probably wasn't the best time to go from a hurry-up spread offense to a pro-style. Probably wasn't the best time for KJ. Landon Montgomery says, Enos' offense does not win. Lane New says it's both on top of House of Cards for an O-line. Landon Montgomery says, tired of saying every year, is it B-ball season yet? Yeah. Jerome McCullum. And I'll say this, guys. Like, what's going on right now sucks. It sucks because, again, they've got a pretty decent roster. It's just they don't have anybody to block for them, and that sucks. It's not lost on me, though, where this program was. And I've said many times, 2018, 2019 is not the standard for which you base Arkansas football, okay? That's just where Arkansas was. Pittman pulled him out of that, and I appreciate that from him. I think he was the right fit at the right time. And I've also heard people say, when they hired Sam Pittman, I was against it. I didn't like that hire. Nobody wanted the job, guys. Like, I did the coaching search. We followed it, and I'm telling you, people were saying I wouldn't touch this job with a 10-foot pole. Like, coaches were saying that. They could not get somebody to take the job. And when the Lane Kiffin stuff fell through, and they interviewed Prime, They interviewed Deion Sanders. This is before Deion Sanders had even coached at Jackson State. And I reported that they'd interviewed Deion Sanders, and people were laughing at me. I put Mike Elko on our coaching search hot board, and people were like, "Are you an idiot?" And look what he's doing at Duke now. But, guys, like, I know it's like not enough to say, like, well, he wanted the job. Like, that's the requirement. Yeah, he wanted the job. Okay, great, give it to him. That's not the requirement. But I'm telling you, it fell to Sam Pittman. Arkansas ended up hiring an offensive line coach because nobody wanted the job. They could not – everybody thought that it was an Arkansas problem and not just a problem with the coaches that they'd hired in the past. And that's the truth. That is the truth. And it's just because people want to fire Pittman doesn't mean that they're just going to go out and get the next superstar at coach. And traditionally they haven't done that. Jerome McCollum said, Trey, it's sad we couldn't celebrate the staggering records KJ broke last week due to the fact that we aren't winning games. Yeah. Kingsley says, KJ has been in an RPO system. It doesn't make him just an RPO QB. It makes time to adjust, but we can't really evaluate him behind the O-line as it is. I agree. Patrick Webb says, why are we running the same 5 guys out there on the offensive line each week? Well, they're about to change that, but I agree. And I wrote about that before the press conference today. Like, maybe some guys need to be moved around on the offensive line. But, guys, if you're moving people around on the offensive line in the middle of the season, that's not like, oh, this is the solution. It may make things better, but it's not a good sign, obviously. And it doesn't mean there's just going to be answers. But, yeah, why not? I mean, I'm sure they have their reasons for Takias Crawford. I have a hard time seeing Takias just getting folded. My opinion. Patrick Webb says, then why is Dan calling these long developing plays when KJ won't have time to read the defense? It's another good question, Patrick. I think more quick game, but at the same time, is KJ a quick game type of quarterback? His best throw is the deep ball. It always has been. It always has been. Just seems like everything's just kind of button heads. Taryn Henry says, been a talent gap since McFadden days, Danny. Tommy Adkins says, even McFadden days, like McFadden didn't have like this all-world offensive line in front of him. Like, name the guys on the offensive line. I mean, I have to go back and look at some of them, but Felton on that offensive line. But anyway, it wasn't like this was an all-world offensive line in front of Darren McFadden and Felix Jones. But they developed them. They figured out, you don't have to it's great to have these first-round NFL draft picks, of course, but you can develop guys on the offensive line if you get the right guys who are tough. And I don't know this just hadn't happened for him. Tommy Atkins says, I think I heard that we were going to do that this week. Yes. Cheryl DeClerc says, NIL is where they are getting paid. Gary Davis says, Trey, the goings-on with the football program are ridiculous, and you've expressed it, so what else can be said about it? About Pittman has failed in offensive line recruiting and failed to use the transfer portal and clearly failed development in the O-line. It's ridiculous. They probably should have done some more work in the transfer portal on the offensive line. John Smith says, great show. Appreciate it. Wish it was a little more positive. Lane New says, in-state talent has dropped. John Smith didn't say it. He wishes it was more talented or more positive. I said that. Taryn Henry says, blame Pittman, Danny. Thomas Clifton Elliott says, need better wide receivers. I think their wide receivers as a group are better overall, top to bottom. Now, Matt Landers is pretty good. Hazelwood, I thought, was a bit of a disappointment last year for him. But I think their wide receivers are actually better than what they were last year, top to bottom. I do. I don't think they're necessarily worse. I think they don't have any time to throw. Like, I bring up the Justin Fields thing every time when he's at Ohio State, and Justin Fields hasn't turned out to be that great a quarterback in the NFL, but he's at Ohio State, and they're going, look how poised. Look at his poise in his pocket, going through his first read, his second, third, fourth, fifth, all the way through his progression. And I'm just sitting there, 2007, 2008, 2009. Of course he looks poised. Of course he's getting all the protection in the world up front. James Kirk says excitement begins with coaching search when the coaching search starts. Cheryl Clark says can't get them here playing like we are. James Kirk says offensive line whipped by BYU and Liberty last year. It's not all about recruiting. Yeah, Liberty. I mean, that was the first thing that, when you lose to a team like Liberty, you lose part of your fan base that you'll never get back when that happens. It's just true. It's just a fact of things. BYU, people talk about Arkansas has the 13th highest talent composite on 24/7 Sports in the SEC. Now, that doesn't really take into effect something that I think is important, and that's the transfer portal world, where you've got veteran, proven guys who may not have been super highly regarded, but have proven who they are, like an Isaac Teslaw, who I think is better than what he's showing, by the way. But BYU was 76th nationally in talent composite, 76, and Arkansas was way higher. Michael Ashcraft says, Sam, it says if you can't recruit, you got to go. Well, according to Danny, our recruiting on the O-line is lacking. Thomas Clifton Elliott says Pittman isn't tough, too nice, soft. I don't know about that. Need a real coach with previous experience. Pittman is not a head coach material. I think it's also an interesting time when, you have to, I don't know, I want to say coddle, but, in a lot of ways, you got to make sure everybody feels like they're part of the team and they've got a chance and all that kind of stuff, because they'll just hit the portal on you. And I think he's dealing with some of that and the balance and question, how do you deal with that? Certainly probably not the job he signed up for, and not any of these coaches did. We got to get some regulation in that department also. However, NIL transfer portal is a good thing for Arkansas football when you consider the talent base they have to recruit from. Kingsley says, Trey, there are a lot of questions about this football team, but one thing that is certain, a lot of these fans have never been on a football field and have no idea what they're talking about. That's probably true. Doesn't mean they don't get to have an opinion as fans. Garrett Barnes says we should keep Pittman for another year at least. He represents our values well and loves kids. He's got to make the right hire at OC, though, lean into the portal for O-line experience. Yeah, I mean, and you just got to win. It's not enough to, you take football out of this, everybody loves Sam Pittman. They just do, okay? You may have soured on him because he's not winning something, but you take that out of the equation and you're just hanging out talking to Sam Pittman, you're going to like the guy. You just are. People do. That's why he was such a great recruiter for years. Cole Trim says, I hate the boys have to see all this bad vibes from Twitter and fans, recruits, and the boys put their foot in the ground this weekend, turned it around, love Sam, hate the situation he's in. Brandon Morgan Fletcher says, did Kiffin really go get a kicker from the frat house last year during the season? I can't remember. That sounds familiar. Kingsley says about the time frame, but I can't agree with the rest of it. Danny is crazy if he thinks the game's going to be well attended when we're 2-7 and we're going to lose recruits. Says Darren Henry. Dustin Everhart says, how do we know he didn't? With the O-line we have, I can't tell, but he's responding to somebody. I'm not sure what you're responding to. Doesn't show me all that. Thomas Clifton Elliott says, we need a coach like Lou Holtz. That kind of tough, strong personality. Thomas Clifton Elliott said, I had a problem getting out of that list when I went on to the next question. Thomas Clifton Elliott says, we don't have money to pay anyone to get an elite coach, Toilet Bowl, okay, Independence Bowl if we're lucky. Yeah, they've got money if it's the right guys there. James Ingles says it doesn't seem that KJ has lost interest and it seems to be going through. Let's see what we can get to. Any questions? Does KJ have the authority to change the play? Sometimes, yes, he does. Sam paid and stopped caring. I don't know if that's true. I think he misjudged what he has on the offensive line. Okay. How long are we going? 1 hour 8. Is this a record? I think it's a record for longest show ever, and there's 1 million replies that I'm not going to be able to get to because we got practice and everything. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I want to thank Andrew Ellis for his takes and Danny West for his takes and recruiting information as well. And go to HawgSports.com. Andrew's going to have plenty from this baseball scrimmage, and we'll have – they've been cranking out the basketball coverage, and we're going to have a lot more on Wednesday. So go check us out at HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com, if you want to read the inside scoop with Razorback Athletics. And you're tired of reading just the free stuff that's out there that just gets regurgitated by everybody. If you want to get some insight on what's going on with the program and football, basketball, baseball, recruiting as well, go to HawgSports.com. Try us out for $1 right now. All right. Thanks to our friends at Ozarks Go. Thanks to all of you for asking your questions, and thank you to our many subscribers at HawgSports.com. Thank you for making us one of the largest sites in the entire country here at Arkansas. It's something that I'm very proud of, being an Arkansas company, and we really appreciate all of you. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.